Running through a blizzard with a dying child in his arms, a mountain man broke into the one cabin everyone said was cursed, and what he found hidden beneath its floors would prove that some secrets are worth 310 million reasons to kill for. Before we dive into this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have an incredible story that will absolutely blow your mind. The wind that morning tasted like iron and ice. Marcus Kane had lived in these Montana mountains long enough to know when nature was preparing something violent. He'd woken before dawn in his off-grid cabin, 12 miles from the nearest paved road, and felt it in his bones. The particular stillness that comes before a storm decides to remind humans exactly how small they are. He was 38 years old, though the mirror suggested someone older. The mountains had a way of carving years into a man's face, etching lines around eyes that had seen too much. His beard was thick and dark, shot through with premature grey. His hands were calloused from chopping wood, setting traps, and doing the 1,000 small tasks required to survive alone in the wilderness. Those same hands had once pulled people from avalanches, carried injured hikers down treacherous slopes, and held the hand of his dying wife as cancer stole her breath by breath. That was 6 years ago. Sarah. Her name still caught in his throat like a fishbone. After she passed, Marcus had walked away from everything: his job with Montana Search and Rescue, his house in Missoula, his friends who kept asking if he was okay when the answer was obviously no. He'd bought this land with their savings, built a cabin with his own hands, and disappeared into the kind of silence that either heals you or buries you. He still wasn't sure which it had done. By 8 o'clock that morning, Marcus had checked his weather radio 3 times. The National Weather Service was calling it a bomb cyclone, whatever the hell that meant. Temperatures dropping to -30. Wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour. Whiteout conditions expected, the kind of storm that killed people who weren't prepared. Marcus was always prepared. He dressed in layers: thermal underwear, wool shirt, insulated pants, his heavy parka that had survived 12 Montana winters. He pulled on his boots, laced them tight, and grabbed his pack. Inside, emergency supplies, fire starter, first aid kit, rope, knife, compass, and the kind of equipment that had saved lives back when saving lives was his job. He wasn't planning to go far, just needed to check his trap lines before the storm hit. He had 6 traps set within a 2-mile radius, mostly for rabbit and marten. It wasn't sport, it was survival. The meat kept him fed. The pelts could be traded in town for supplies when he made his monthly trip down the mountain. The first trap was empty. So was the second. By the time Marcus reached the third, the snow had started, small, hard flakes that stung his face like thrown sand. The temperature had dropped 10 degrees in less than an hour. The wind had picked up, howling through the pine trees with a sound like distant screaming. He checked the 4th trap, reset it, and was heading toward the 5th when he saw the tracks. Boot prints, small, recent enough that the falling snow hadn't filled them in yet. Marcus stopped, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. No one came up here, especially not in winter, especially not before a storm that every weather service in the region had been screaming about for 2 days. The tracks wandered, crossed back on themselves, circled. Whoever had made them was lost. Marcus's old instincts kicked in before his brain could argue. He followed the tracks, moving faster now, his eyes scanning the tree line. The snow was falling harder. Visibility was dropping. Within 30 minutes, these tracks would be completely buried. He found her 20 minutes later, huddled against a fallen log, barely visible under a dusting of fresh snow. She was a child. Maybe 8 years old, maybe younger. Hard to tell with her face pressed against her knees, her small body curled into itself like a question mark. She wore jeans, sneakers, and a fleece jacket that might have been adequate for a fall hike, but was a death sentence in this weather. "Hey!" Marcus called out, his voice rough from disuse. He lived alone. Sometimes he went days without speaking out loud. The girl didn't move. Marcus closed the distance quickly, dropping to his knees beside her. He pulled off his glove and pressed 2 fingers against her neck. Pulse was there, but slow. Too slow. Her skin was cold, pale, almost blue at the fingertips. Her breathing was shallow. Hypothermia. Stage 2, maybe stage 3. "Can you hear me?" Marcus asked, shaking her shoulder gently. Her eyes fluttered open, brown, unfocused, clouded with confusion. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Marcus didn't waste time with more questions. He shrugged off his pack, pulled out an emergency thermal blanket, and wrapped it around her. Then he unzipped his parka and pulled the girl inside against his chest, zipping it back up. His body heat might be the only thing keeping her alive right now. She was so small, so cold. He looked around, getting his bearings. His cabin was 3 miles northeast, in good weather, an easy hour's walk. In this storm, with a hypothermic child and visibility dropping to 20 feet, it might as well have been on the moon. The temperature was plummeting. The wind was picking up. This was about to get worse, much worse. And then Marcus remembered something that made his blood run colder than the wind. The Whitmore cabin. It was less than a mile west, maybe closer. An old structure that had been standing empty since the 1970s. Everyone in the valley knew about it, and everyone avoided it. The stories varied depending on who was telling them. Some said the Whitmore family had been murdered there, bodies never found. Others claimed they'd simply vanished one winter night, left everything behind. Food on the table, clothes in the closets, car in the driveway. The local sheriff's office had investigated back in 76 or 77, found nothing, closed the case. The property had sat untouched ever since, trapped in some kind of legal limbo. People who went near the place reported feeling watched. Hunters claimed their dogs refused to get close. Teenagers who tried to break in as a dare said the door was always locked, windows sealed, like someone was still maintaining it. The stories had taken on the weight of legend. The forbidden cabin, the cursed house, the place where the Whitmores disappeared. Marcus had seen it once, years ago, when he'd first moved to the area. He'd been hiking, mapping his property lines, and stumbled across it. A solid log structure with a stone chimney, built into the side of the mountain like it had grown there. He'd felt the same thing everyone else reported, that prickle on the back of his neck that said someone was watching. He'd left without getting too close. But right now, with a dying child pressed against his chest and a storm that would kill them both if he tried to make it home, the Whitmore cabin wasn't cursed. It was shelter. Marcus made his decision in the space of a heartbeat. He stood, adjusted the girl in his arms, and turned west. The storm hit with the force of a physical blow. One moment, Marcus could see 10 feet ahead. The next, the world became a wall of white. Snow came at him sideways, driven by wind that sounded like a freight train. The temperature dropped so fast he felt his exposed skin burning with cold. He bent his head, protecting the girl as best he could, and pushed forward. Every step was a battle. The snow was already knee-deep and getting deeper. The wind tried to knock him off his feet. He couldn't see landmarks, couldn't see the tree line, couldn't see anything except white chaos. He navigated by instinct and memory, trying to remember the terrain, the slope of the mountain, the direction of the wind. The girl in his arms had gone completely still. Marcus couldn't tell if she was conscious or not. He pressed his cheek against the top of her head and felt a faint warmth. Still alive, but for how long? His legs burned, his lungs burned, ice formed in his beard, his fingers were going numb despite his gloves. Every breath was a knife in his chest. He almost walked right past the cabin. It appeared out of the storm like a ghost, solid, real, impossible. One moment, there was nothing but swirling white. The next, there were log walls and a stone chimney and a heavy wooden door. Marcus had never been so grateful to see a building in his life. He stumbled up onto the covered porch, and the relief from the wind was immediate. He could hear himself think again, could hear the girl's shallow breathing. He tried the door handle, locked as expected. But what he didn't expect was the lock itself. This wasn't the original hardware from the 1970s. This was a modern deadbolt. Expensive. The kind of lock you put on something you actually wanted to protect. Marcus stared at it for half a second, his frozen brain trying to process what that meant. Then the girl in his arms made a small sound, a whimper of pain or fear, and his thinking stopped. He set her down gently against the cabin wall, pulled off his pack, and grabbed his hatchet. The door was solid wood, but the frame was old. Marcus aimed for the weak point where the deadbolt met the strike plate. 3 hard hits, and the wood splintered. 1 more, and the door swung open. He grabbed the girl and stumbled inside. The first thing that hit him was the warmth. Not much, but enough to tell him this place wasn't exposed to the outside air. The second thing was the smell, cedar and dust, but underneath it, something else, something fresh. Marcus kicked the door closed behind him, shutting out the storm's howl. In the sudden quiet, he could hear his own ragged breathing, the girl's shallow gasps, and the ticking of what sounded like a clock. His eyes adjusted to the dim interior. The cabin was immaculate. Marcus stood frozen, the girl still in his arms, staring at what should have been impossible. This place had supposedly been abandoned for nearly 50 years, but the furniture wasn't covered in dust sheets. The floor wasn't rotting. The windows weren't broken. Everything was clean, maintained, waiting. There was a leather couch with cushions that looked soft, a wood stove in the corner with kindling stacked neatly beside it, a dining table with 4 chairs, built-in shelves lined with books, framed photographs on the walls, a thick rug that looked hand-woven. None of it made sense, but Marcus didn't have time to make sense of it. The girl in his arms was dying. He carried her to the couch, laid her down gently, and immediately began assessing her condition. Her skin was waxy, pale, her fingernails were blue, her breathing was shallow and irregular. Classic, severe hypothermia. Marcus had seen this before, had treated it before. The protocol was burned into his memory from his search and rescue days. First, remove wet clothing. He carefully pulled off her soaked sneakers and socks. Her feet were ice cold, mottled purple and white. Possible frostbite, but that was a secondary concern right now. Second, warm the core. He found blankets in a chest by the couch, thick wool blankets that smelled faintly of cedar. He wrapped her in 3 layers, making sure to cover her head. Third, heat source. He moved to the wood stove, opened it, and found it already laid with kindling and split logs, like someone had prepared it to be lit. He struck a match from his pack and held it to the kindling. It caught immediately, flames licking up through the carefully arranged wood. Within minutes, warmth began spreading through the cabin. Marcus returned to the girl, checking her pulse again. Still weak, but steady. He rubbed her hands gently, trying to restore circulation without causing more damage. Her eyes were closed, her face slack. "Come on," he murmured. "Stay with me. You're going to be okay." He didn't know if he believed it, but saying it out loud felt important. While the fire built and the cabin warmed, Marcus took stock of his surroundings more carefully. Now that immediate survival wasn't the only concern, the strangeness of the place settled over him like a heavy coat. Everything here was wrong. The cabin wasn't just maintained, it was lived in, or at least it looked lived in. But by who? No one had come up that road. No vehicles were parked outside. The place was supposed to be abandoned, cursed, forbidden. Marcus moved to the kitchen area, a compact space with a propane stove, a sink and cabinets. He opened the first cabinet and his stomach dropped. Food, canned goods, dried pasta, rice, oatmeal. He picked up a can of soup and checked the expiration date. August 2025, 8 months from now. This food was fresh. He opened the refrigerator, not expecting it to work. It hummed to life when the door opened, light flooding her interior stocked with condiments, vegetables and sealed packages. The propane tank must have been recently filled. Someone had been here. Recently. Maybe within the last week. Marcus's hand instinctively went to the knife on his belt. His eyes scanned the cabin more carefully now, looking for signs of who might be maintaining this place. Looking for signs of danger. That's when he noticed them. Small, dark circles in the corners of the ceiling. Security cameras. 3 that he could see, probably more hidden throughout the cabin. His blood ran cold. Whoever owned this place knew he was here. Right now. They were watching. Marcus looked directly at the nearest camera and spoke out loud. "I'm not here to steal. The storm forced me inside. There's a child with hypothermia. We'll leave as soon as it's safe." No response. No sound except the crackling of the fire and the muffled howl of the storm outside. Marcus turned back to check on the girl. Her color was slightly better. The warmth was helping. He brought her water from his pack, managed to get her to take a few sips. She coughed, blinked, and her eyes focused on him for the first time. "Where?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're safe," Marcus said. "We're in a cabin. There's a storm outside. Do you remember what happened?" Her brow furrowed, struggling to think through the fog of hypothermia. "Aunt Rachel," she finally said. "We were hiking. She said we had to find something. Then she was gone." "What's your name?" Marcus asked gently. "Emma." "I'm Marcus. How old are you, Emma?" 8. She tried to sit up, but Marcus placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Stay down. You need to rest. You were very cold. You're warming up now, but you need to take it slow." "Where's Aunt Rachel?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "She walked away. She said she'd be right back, but she didn't come back. I waited so long." Marcus felt a weight settle in his chest. An adult who leaves an 8-year-old alone in the wilderness before a major storm doesn't walk away accidentally. Something had happened, something bad. "How long ago did she leave?" he asked. Emma's face scrunched up, trying to remember. "I don't know. The sun was still up. I waited and waited. Then it got dark. Then it got so cold. At least 12 hours, maybe more. An adult alone in these mountains during a blizzard, without shelter, without the right gear, the odds weren't good." "Do you know why you were hiking up here?" Marcus asked. "Did your aunt say?" Emma nodded slowly. "She said we were going to Grandpa's cabin. She said it was important. She said there was something here that belonged to our family." Marcus felt something click in his mind. A child named Emma, a aunt looking for a family cabin. The Whitmore place. "Emma," he said carefully. "What's your last name?" "Whitmore," the girl said. "Emma Whitmore." The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop despite the fire blazing in the stove. Marcus stared at the child, at this impossible, dangerous coincidence. The Whitmores, the family that disappeared 50 years ago, and here was their granddaughter brought to this cursed cabin by an aunt who had vanished into a blizzard. None of this was coincidence. None of this was accident. Marcus stood and walked back through the cabin, really looking at it now. At the photographs on the walls, a family of 4, smiling, posed in front of this very cabin. A man with a thick moustache and kind eyes. A woman with dark hair pulled back. 2 children, boy and girl, maybe 10 and 12 years old. The photographs were dated, 1976, the summer before the Whitmores disappeared. He moved to the bookshelf, scanning titles. Technical manuals on geology, mining surveys, books about gemstones and precious minerals, all with bookmarks and notes sticking out like someone had been studying them recently. On the desk in the corner, Marcus found papers. Maps of the surrounding area with markings and notes, property deeds, legal documents, all yellowed with age but preserved carefully. And then he saw it. A leather-bound journal sitting in the center of the desk like it had been left there deliberately. Marcus opened it. The handwriting was neat, precise. January 18th, 1976. The survey confirmed what I suspected. This mountain is sitting on something extraordinary. The geological formation is unique. Metamorphic rock subjected to extreme pressure and the right mineral combination. If I'm correct, there's enough raw alexandrite here to change everything. Marcus flipped through more pages. Entries about mining rights, about keeping the discovery secret, about protecting the family. The tone grew increasingly paranoid as the months progressed. They know. I don't know how, but they know. Carson from Titan Resources showed up yesterday asking questions about mineral surveys. He wasn't friendly. Sarah wanted to call the police, but what would I tell them? That I found a fortune and now people are threatening us. The entries continued, each one darker than the last. The phone calls are getting worse. Someone broke into my truck. They're watching the house in town. I've moved everything important up to the cabin. Sarah thinks I'm being paranoid, but I know what's happening. I've seen what these companies do when they want something. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he turned to the last entry. The date, October 9th, 1976. If you're reading this, then we didn't make it. The collection is hidden below. I've spent everything, our savings, my health, my family's safety, to extract and protect it. $310 million worth of the finest alexandrite crystals ever found in North America. They're hidden where only family can find them. The code is Emma's birthday. Emma, my sweet granddaughter born just last week. If anyone has the right to this legacy, it's those who carry our blood. Protect it, use it wisely, and never, never let them win. Marcus closed the journal, his mind racing. Emma's birthday. The code to what? He looked around the cabin with new eyes. That's when he noticed it. A door on the far wall, partially obscured by a tall bookshelf. Easy to miss in the dim light. He walked over, moved the bookshelf aside. It slid easily, like it had been moved many times before. Behind it was a steel door, modern, reinforced, completely out of place in this rustic cabin, and next to it a keypad with 10 numbered buttons. Emma's birthday. Marcus turned back to look at the girl on the couch. She'd fallen asleep, her breathing deeper now, more regular. Color was returning to her cheeks. $310 million in gemstones hidden somewhere below this cabin. A family that disappeared protecting their secret. An aunt who brought Emma here and then vanished into a storm. Security cameras watching his every move. Outside, the blizzard howled with renewed fury, shaking the cabin walls. Marcus was trapped here, at least until the storm passed. And during that time, someone who knew he was here, who had been watching this place for decades, might decide to come calling. He walked back to the couch and sat down beside Emma. His hand rested on the knife at his belt. His eyes flicked to the windows, watching for movement in the storm. Whatever happened next, he needed to be ready. Because secrets worth $310 million didn't stay buried without someone standing guard. And Marcus had just broken into their fortress. The storm raged through the night like something alive and angry. Marcus didn't sleep. He sat in a wooden chair by the window, watching the white chaos beyond the glass, listening to every creak and groan of the cabin. The fire in the stove burned low. He fed it periodically, keeping the temperature steady but not warm enough to make him drowsy. He couldn't afford to let his guard down. Emma slept fitfully on the couch, wrapped in layers of wool blankets. Every hour, Marcus checked her pulse, her breathing, the color of her skin. By 3 a.m, her vital signs had stabilized. The immediate danger of hypothermia had passed. She'd live. But whether either of them would make it off this mountain alive was another question entirely. The security cameras in the corners remained dark and silent. No red lights, no obvious signs of recording, but Marcus felt them watching like eyes in the darkness. Someone knew he was here. Someone was deciding what to do about it. He thought about Sarah, about the last time he'd sat vigil like this, watching over someone he was trying to save. That had been in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and false hope. The machines had beeped their steady rhythm right up until they didn't. He'd held her hand and felt the warmth leave it degree by degree, the same way he'd felt Emma's coldness seeping into his chest through his parka on the mountain. Some people you can save, some you can't. Marcus was still trying to figure out which category he fell into. Dawn came slowly, filtering through the storm in shades of grey. The wind had died down slightly, but snow still fell in thick curtains. Marcus estimated they'd gotten at least 3 feet overnight, maybe more. The drifts outside the windows reached halfway up the glass. Even if he wanted to leave, even if Emma was strong enough, they wouldn't make it 50 yards. They were trapped here, at least for another day, maybe 2. Emma stirred around 7, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment she looked confused, frightened. Then she saw Marcus and seemed to remember. "You're still here," she said, her voice rough. "I'm still here," Marcus confirmed. "How do you feel?" She considered the question seriously. "Cold, and my fingers hurt." "That's actually good. It means the circulation is coming back." Marcus moved to the couch, knelt beside her. "Can you wiggle your toes?" Emma concentrated, her face scrunching up. Her toes moved beneath the blankets. Yes. Good. That's very good. Marcus helped her sit up slowly. Are you hungry? Emma nodded. Marcus went to the kitchen, his mind still spinning with questions he didn't have answers to. He found a can of chicken soup in the cupboard, opened it, and heated it on the propane stove. While it warmed, he made weak tea from a box of Lipton he found in a drawer. The normalcy of the actions felt surreal against the strangeness of everything else. He brought Emma the soup and tea on a wooden tray. She ate slowly, carefully, like every spoonful required concentration. Emma, Marcus said gently, sitting across from her, I need to ask you some more questions about your aunt, about why you came here. Emma looked up from her soup, eyes wary. You said you were looking for your grandpa's cabin, that there was something here that belonged to your family. She nodded. Did your aunt tell you what you were looking for? Emma shook her head. She just said it was important. She said our family had something here that was ours, that we had a right to it. How much did she tell you about your grandfather? About what happened to him? Emma's eyes dropped back to her soup. She said Grandpa Gerald disappeared a long time ago, before I was born. She said some people thought bad things happened, but Aunt Rachel didn't believe it. She said Grandpa was smart, that he planned everything. Planned what? To disappear, to keep the family safe. Emma took another spoonful of soup. Aunt Rachel said when the time was right, we'd come back and claim what was ours. Marcus felt ice in his veins that had nothing to do with the temperature. Emma, when is your birthday? The girl looked surprised by the question. March 5th. What year were you born? 2017. Marcus did the math. March 5th, 2017. Gerald Whitmore's journal entry mentioned Emma, his granddaughter born just last week, dated October 9th, 1976. But that would make this Emma. He looked at the girl again. 8 years old. The timeline didn't match, unless there had been another Emma. An older Emma who would be in her late 40s now, and this Emma was named after her. A family name, a legacy name. Emma, who is your mother? The girl's face crumpled slightly. She died when I was little. I don't really remember her. Aunt Rachel raised me. And your mother's name? Emma. Like me, I was named after her. There it was, the pattern emerging from the fog. Gerald Whitmore had a granddaughter named Emma, born in 1976. That Emma grew up, had a daughter, named her Emma as well, and now that daughter was here, brought by her Aunt Rachel, who must be Gerald's daughter, to claim whatever legacy their family had hidden. But Rachel was gone, lost in the storm, or worse. Marcus stood and walked back to the desk where he'd found Gerald's journal. He opened it again, flipping to the final entry. The code is Emma's birthday. March 5th. But which Emma? The mother or the daughter? He pulled out his phone, checked the date. December 22nd, 2024. Emma Whitmore, the girl on his couch, would turn 8 years old in less than 3 months. March 5th, 2017. 352017. Marcus looked at the steel door with its keypad, his heart hammered against his ribs. Emma, he said, keeping his voice casual, I found something interesting. There's a locked door here. I think it might have been your grandfather's workshop or something. Would you like to see if we can open it? Emma perked up, setting aside her empty soup bowl. Really? Really, but you need to take it slow. You're still recovering. She stood carefully, testing her legs. They held. Marcus helped her walk across the cabin to where the bookshelf had been moved aside, revealing the steel door. Emma's eyes went wide. That's not old like the rest of the cabin. No, Marcus agreed. It's not. Someone put this in more recently, to protect something. He gestured to the keypad. It needs a code, a birthday, your birthday. Emma looked at him, understanding dawning. My birthday is the code? Maybe. Want to try? She reached out with one small hand and carefully pressed the numbers. 3, 5, 2, 0, 1, 7. For a moment, nothing happened. Marcus held his breath. Then a deep mechanical click echoed from somewhere behind the steel. The door shuddered, and slowly, with a pneumatic hiss, it swung inward. Cool air rushed out, carrying the scent of earth and stone and something else, something mineral and ancient. Beyond the door, stone steps descended into absolute darkness. Marcus grabbed his flashlight from his pack, tested it. The beam cut through the shadows, revealing steps that went down, down, down into the mountain itself. "Stay close to me," Marcus said, "and if I tell you to run, you run back up these stairs and out the cabin door. Understand?" Emma nodded, her face pale but determined. They descended together. The stairs were carved from living rock, smooth from decades or perhaps centuries of water seeping through. The air grew colder as they went down. Marcus counted steps. 20, 30, 40. They'd gone deep enough to be well beneath the cabin's foundation now, deep into the mountain itself. The stairs ended at a landing, and beyond that, a cavern. Marcus swept his flashlight across the space, and his breath caught in his throat. The cavern was massive, easily 60 feet across, maybe 40 feet high. But it wasn't natural. This had been excavated, carved out by human hands. The walls were reinforced with timber supports. The ceiling was fitted with electric lights, currently dark. And everywhere, covering every surface, lining every wall, were display cases. Marcus found a switch near the landing. He flipped it, not really expecting anything. The lights hummed to life. And the cavern exploded with color. The display cases, and there were dozens of them, maybe hundreds, held crystals. But not just any crystals. These were large, some the size of baseballs, others bigger than his fist, and they shimmered with an otherworldly quality, changing color as Marcus moved his head. Green, purple, red, blue-green. The colors shifted and danced depending on the angle of the light. "What are they?" Emma whispered, her voice full of awe. Marcus had seen a lot in his life, but he'd never seen anything like this. "I think they're alexandrite," he said, "a type of chrysoberyl, very rare. They change color depending on the light source." He walked to the nearest display case. Inside, resting on black velvet, was a crystal cluster roughly the size of a softball. A small brass plaque beneath it read, "Specimen A1, extracted June 1976, 14.3 carats rough, est value post-cut, 600,000 to 1.2 million. Marcus moved to the next case, and the next. Each held similar crystals, each had similar plaques with weights and values that made his head spin. Emma wandered deeper into the cavern, her small figure dwarfed by the rows of gleaming cases. "There are so many," she said. Marcus followed her, his flashlight no longer necessary in the bright overhead lights. The cavern seemed to go on forever. Row after row of display cases, wall-mounted cases, freestanding cases, all of them filled with raw alexandrite in various sizes and qualities. At the center of the cavern stood a large wooden desk, similar to the one upstairs but bigger, more official. On it sat ledgers, documents, and what looked like certification papers. Marcus opened the first ledger. His hands trembled slightly as he read. "Whitmore Collection, complete inventory, 334 specimens, total carat weight, 41,200 carats rough. Estimated cut yield, 28,000 carats fine. Current market value per carat, $11,000 to $15,000 depending on quality and color change. Total estimated collection value, $310 million to $420 million. The numbers swam in front of Marcus's eyes. $310 million, minimum. He flipped through more pages. Each specimen was catalogued meticulously. Photographs, weights, quality assessments, extraction dates, everything documented with scientific precision. There were also letters. Marcus pulled one from an envelope dated March 1976. "Mr. Whitmore, this is your final warning. Titan Resources has made you a generous offer for your land. $600,000 is more than fair for 40 acres of mountain property. If you continue to refuse, we will be forced to take other measures. We know what you've found. We know what you're hiding. Cooperate or face the consequences. Signed, Connor Blake, Senior Acquisitions, Titan Resources. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Connor Blake. That was a name he recognized, not personally, but from his time with Search and Rescue. Blake had been involved in some shady mining operations in the early 2000s. There'd been accidents, unexplained deaths, environmental disasters that got buried under paperwork and payoffs. The man was dangerous, and if he was still alive, he'd be in his 70s now. Marcus pulled out more letters. The threats escalated, veiled at first, then explicit. Your family is at risk. We know where your children go to school. Accidents happen in these mountains. And then, dated October 7th, 1976, a final letter. You have 24 hours to accept our offer or vacate the property. After that, we cannot guarantee your safety or that of your family. This is not a negotiation. Marcus checked the dates again. Gerald's final journal entry had been October 9th. 2 days after this last threat, that's when the Whitmores disappeared. They'd run, packed up their family and vanished to protect themselves and this impossible fortune hidden beneath their cabin. But they'd left behind clues, codes, a way for future generations to find and claim what was rightfully theirs. Mr. Marcus. Emma's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She was standing near the far wall of the cavern, pointing at something. There's more back here. Marcus joined her. Behind a partition was another section of the cavern. This area held equipment, mining tools, extraction gear, polishing wheels, cutting equipment. Everything needed to process raw gemstones, and beyond that, a reinforced steel cage. Inside the cage were sealed containers, military-grade, waterproof, airtight. Each was labeled with dates and contents. Marcus tried the cage door, locked, but through the bars he could read the labels on the nearest container. Processed specimens, cut and polished, 112 pieces, total value, $48 million. What happens next will turn this mountain refuge into a deadly trap, reveal a conspiracy that spans 5 decades, and prove that some secrets are protected by people who will stop at nothing to keep them buried. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories. Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Is this all ours, mine and Aunt Rachel's? Marcus looked down at the girl, this small, brave child who had no idea she was standing in the middle of a fortune that powerful people had killed to control. I think so, he said carefully. But Emma, this is dangerous. People knew your grandfather found this. Bad people. They threatened him. That's why your family disappeared. But we can go to the police now, right? Tell them what we found? Marcus wanted to say yes, wanted to believe it was that simple. But the security cameras upstairs, the perfectly maintained cabin, the fresh food in the pantry, someone had been maintaining this place for almost 50 years. Someone who knew what was down here, someone who'd been waiting. Let's go back upstairs, Marcus said. We need to... A sound cut him off, faint but unmistakable. Footsteps above them, in the cabin. Marcus's hand went to his knife. He grabbed Emma and pulled her behind him, moving quickly but quietly back toward the stairs. His mind raced. The storm was still raging outside. No one should be able to reach the cabin. Unless they'd been close already. Unless they'd been watching and waiting for the storm to provide cover. He killed the cavern lights with a switch near the stairs. Darkness swallowed them. Only his flashlight beam remained, pointed at the ground. Up the stairs, he whispered to Emma. Slowly, quietly. They climbed. Marcus kept his body between Emma and whatever was waiting above. His knife was in his hand now. 12 years since he'd needed to use it as a weapon, but the muscle memory was still there. They reached the top of the stairs. The steel door was still open. Beyond it, Marcus could see the cabin interior, lit by the grey stormlight filtering through windows. 2 figures stood in the main room. Both men. One elderly, maybe 70, thin and weathered. The other younger, maybe mid-40s, with the build of someone who worked with his hands. Both had their hands visible. Neither was holding a weapon. The older man turned as Marcus emerged from behind the steel door. Emma clutched close behind him. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the old man spoke, his voice cracked and tired. "Put the knife away, son. We're not here to hurt anyone." Marcus didn't lower the blade. "Who are you?" The old man sighed, pulled off his winter hat, revealed thin white hair and a face mapped with age lines. "My name is Thomas Brennan, and this," he gestured to the younger man, "is my son David. We've been taking care of this place for a very long time." "Taking care of it for who?" Thomas's eyes moved past Marcus to Emma, and something in his expression softened. "For the Whitmores, for Gerald, who was my best friend, and for his family, who we promised to protect." Emma peered around Marcus. "You knew my grandpa?" Thomas nodded slowly, and Marcus saw tears gathering in the old man's eyes. "I did, little one. Gerald and I worked together. We found this place together. And when things got dangerous, when men with guns and no conscience came looking for what we'd found, I helped him disappear, helped him protect his family." Marcus's grip on the knife loosened slightly, but he didn't put it away. "You've been maintaining this cabin for 48 years. 48 years, Thomas confirmed. Paid the property taxes out of my own pocket, kept the place secure, waited for the day when it would be safe for the Whitmores to come home." His voice broke slightly. "I thought Gerald might come back himself, but he never did, and I realized eventually that he couldn't, that something had happened." David, the younger man, stepped forward. "We've been watching the cabin on security feeds. Saw you break in during the storm, saw the girl. It took us 6 hours to get up here through the blizzard." He paused. "We thought you might be with Titan Resources. Thought they'd finally found this place." "Titan is still looking?" Marcus asked. Thomas's face hardened. "Titan Resources never stopped looking. They've changed leadership over the years, but the goal stayed the same. Find the Whitmore cache, claim it by any means necessary." He moved slowly to the couch and sat down like his legs could no longer hold him. 2 days ago, we picked up chatter. Someone asking questions in town about the Whitmore property, a woman and a young girl. Emma gasped. "Aunt Rachel?" Thomas looked at her with infinite sadness. "Your aunt came to town asking about Gerald Whitmore, about property records and mining claims. She didn't know that for 48 years we've kept those records buried, hidden, protected." He paused. "But she asked the wrong person. Someone who still has connections to Titan." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What happened to Rachel?" Thomas closed his eyes. "We tried to warn her, left a note at her hotel, told her to leave, that it wasn't safe, but she didn't listen. She brought the girl up the mountain anyway." David took over, his voice heavy. "We found Rachel's body 3 days ago, at the bottom of Widow's Ravine, about 2 miles from here. We think she was followed. We think they caught up with her." Emma made a small, broken sound. Marcus pulled her close, felt her body shaking with sobs. "She tried to lead them away from Emma," Thomas said quietly. "Sent the girl ahead, told her to wait. Then Rachel went a different direction, led them away. We found evidence of a chase. Found tracks from at least 3 men." He opened his eyes, and they were full of old grief. "She saved Emma's life by sacrificing her own." The cabin fell silent except for Emma's quiet crying and the wind howling outside. Marcus's mind spun, putting pieces together. "Titan Resources killed her. We can't prove it," David said. "Not yet, but yes, we believe so." "And you think they know about Emma?" Thomas nodded grimly. "They saw Rachel had a child with her. They'll be looking, and as soon as this storm clears, they'll come here. Because this cabin is the only structure for 15 miles. They'll know you took shelter here." Marcus looked at Emma, then at the steel door leading down to $300 million in gemstones, then at the 2 men who claimed to be protectors of a legacy nearly 5 decades old. "Why didn't you just claim it yourselves?" Marcus asked. "All these years, that fortune down there, why protect it for a family that disappeared?" Thomas met his eyes steadily. "Because it wasn't mine. Because Gerald trusted me. And because some things matter more than money, like keeping your word, like protecting the innocent. He paused. Gerald made me promise that only his blood would claim this legacy, made me swear it. So I've waited, maintained, protected. And now, after 48 years, his granddaughter has come home. Marcus looked at Emma, 8 years old, orphaned, the last of the Whitmore line, heir to an impossible fortune, and now, target of people who'd already killed to get what they wanted. "We need to get her out of here," Marcus said. "Soon as the storm clears, we need to move." "Where?" David asked. "Titan has resources, money, connections. They've been searching for this place for decades. Now that they know the family is back, they won't stop." Thomas stood slowly, walked to the window, looked out at the white chaos. "There might be another way," he said quietly. "A way to end this, finally." Marcus waited. "We have evidence," Thomas continued. 48 years of documentation, threats, crimes, bodies that were never found, environmental disasters that were covered up. We've been collecting it, saving it, waiting for the right moment. He turned back to Marcus. "If we expose everything, if we go public with the evidence and the claim, Titan can't touch us. They can't silence all of us." "They can try," Marcus said darkly. "They can," Thomas agreed. "But we have something now we've never had before. We have the rightful heir. We have you." He gestured to Marcus. "Someone with no connection to the Whitmores, no reason to lie. We have documentation. And we have the Alexandrite collection itself as proof." David pulled out a satellite phone from his coat. "I know a reporter, investigative journalist, works for the Associated Press. She's made a career out of exposing corporate corruption. If we can get her the evidence, get Emma to safety, and go public all at once, Titan loses. They can't fight a story that's already broken." Marcus looked down at Emma. She'd stopped crying, but her face was pale, exhausted. She'd lost her aunt. She'd nearly died on a mountain, and now she was caught in a conspiracy that had killed before and would kill again. "What do you say?" Thomas asked quietly. "Help us end this. Help us give Gerald's legacy to the person it belongs to. Help us finally bring justice for all the people Titan Resources has destroyed." Outside, the storm howled. Inside, the fire crackled. And somewhere beneath their feet, $310 million worth of crystals waited in the dark. Marcus made his decision. "Tell me everything," he said. "Start from the beginning, from the day Gerald found the first Alexandrite, and don't leave anything out. Because if we're going to war with a company that's been killing people for 5 decades, I need to know exactly what we're up against." Thomas smiled grimly. "Sit down, son. This is going to take a while." As Emma curled up on the couch and the storm raged on, Thomas began to tell the story of Gerald Whitmore, of a discovery that should have changed lives for the better, and of the evil that had hunted it ever since. Thomas Brennan settled into the leather armchair near the fire, his weathered hands clasped together like he was praying. David stood behind him, one hand on his father's shoulder. Emma had curled up on the couch, wrapped in blankets, her eyes red from crying but fixed on Thomas with an intensity that made her look older than 8. Marcus remained standing, positioned where he could see the door and windows. Old habits from his search and rescue days. Always know your exits. Always be ready to move. "I met Gerald Whitmore in the spring of 1974, Thomas began, his voice carrying the weight of decades. "I was working as a geological surveyor for the state. Gerald was a geologist with the U.S. Geological Survey. We were both assigned to map mineral deposits in this region of Montana. Standard work, nothing glamorous. We'd spend weeks hiking these mountains, taking samples, making notes that probably nobody would ever read." He paused, staring into the fire like he could see the past in the flames. Gerald was different from most scientists I'd worked with. He had this passion, this belief that the Earth still had secrets to give up if you knew where to look. Most guys, they'd follow the protocol, take their samples, file their reports, and go home. Gerald would stay out. He'd climb ridges nobody had mapped. He'd examine rock formations that weren't on our assignment list. He was always looking for something more. David spoke up. "Tell him about the ridge." Thomas nodded. June 23, 1974. Gerald wanted to check out a rock formation about 3 miles from here. Metamorphic stone heavily folded. I thought it was a waste of time. We'd already surveyed that area, but Gerald insisted, said the coloration was unusual, so we climbed up there. His eyes got distant. The formation was exposed by a recent rock slide, maybe from spring melt, maybe from a small earthquake. Either way, there was fresh stone showing, and when Gerald cracked off a sample with his hammer, he stopped breathing. Just stood there, holding this piece of rock, staring at it like it was speaking to him. Chrysoberyl, Thomas continued, with the specific chemical composition and crystal structure of alexandrite. He did field tests right there, showed me how the stone changed color depending on the light. Green in daylight, red-purple under his flashlight. Real alexandrite, not synthetic, and not just a trace amount. The entire formation showed signs of significant deposits. Marcus listened, trying to imagine the moment. 2 men on a mountain, finding something that would destroy one life and define another. "We kept it quiet at first," Thomas said. "Filed our official reports with no mention of the chrysoberyl. Gerald wanted time to understand the scope of what we'd found. We came back weekend after weekend, taking samples, mapping the formation. The more we dug, the more we found. It wasn't just surface deposits, it went deep into the mountain, alexandrite of exceptional quality and size." "Why didn't you report it?" Marcus asked. "Wasn't that your job?" Thomas's face hardened. "Because Gerald had seen what happened when major mineral deposits were discovered. The companies move in. They buy the land for pennies or use legal tricks to seize it. The original owners get nothing while corporations make billions. Gerald wanted this discovery to belong to someone who would respect it, someone who would benefit from it properly." "He wanted it for himself," Marcus said flatly. "No." Thomas's voice was sharp. "He wanted it for his family, for his children, for future generations. Gerald filed a legal claim through proper channels. Bought this land from the owner, 40 acres including the deposit site. Paid $42,000 for it, which was most of his and his wife Sarah's savings. It was legitimate, legal, his." David moved to the window, looking out at the storm. "That's when Titan Resources got interested." Thomas nodded grimly. "We don't know how they found out. Maybe someone at the county clerk's office tipped them off when Gerald filed his mineral rights claim. Maybe they had people watching geological surveys. But within 2 months, representatives from Titan showed up at Gerald's house in Missoula. "Let me guess," Marcus said. "They made him an offer he couldn't refuse." $600,000, Thomas said. "Generous on the surface. Except Gerald knew what was under this mountain. He'd done the calculations. Conservative estimates put the alexandrite deposit at over $500 million worth of raw material. Titan was offering him a fraction of a percent of the true value. He said no. He said no. And that's when things got ugly." Thomas stood slowly, walked to the desk, and pulled out a worn leather folder. He handed it to Marcus. Inside were letters, photographs, police reports. "It started with phone calls," Thomas said. "Anonymous, late at night, threats. Then Gerald's car was vandalized. Then someone broke into his office at the university. Files were stolen. Research was destroyed. The police called it random crime. But Gerald knew better." Marcus flipped through the documents, found a photograph of a man in his early 50s, dark suit, cold eyes. The caption read, "Connor Blake, Senior Acquisitions Director, Titan Resources." "Blake was the hammer," David said. "Titan's enforcer, former military intelligence, connections everywhere. If negotiation didn't work, Blake made problems disappear." Thomas continued. "Gerald and I worked through the spring and summer of 1976 extracting as much alexandrite as we could. We'd come up here on weekends, use handheld mining equipment, carefully remove the best specimens. It was slow, dangerous work. We had to keep it secret, had to make sure nobody knew what we were doing." "You built the vault," Marcus said. "We excavated it, reinforced it, installed the security, all of it off the books, paid cash for materials. Did the work ourselves." Thomas's voice carried a hint of pride. Gerald was protecting his family's future. I was helping my best friend. We thought if we could extract enough, document it properly, secure it, then eventually we could sell it legitimately, set up his children for life. Emma had been quiet, but now she spoke up, her voice small. What happened to them? To Grandpa Gerald and his family? Thomas's expression crumbled. He sat back down heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 70-plus years. The threats escalated. Blake's people followed Gerald's wife to the grocery store. They photographed his children at school. They made it clear that if Gerald didn't sell, bad things would happen. Accidents. Tragic but unavoidable accidents. The cabin fell silent except for the crackling fire and the wind outside. October 7th, 1976, Thomas said. Gerald received a final letter, 24 hours to accept Titan's offer or vacate the property. After that, they couldn't guarantee his family's safety. It wasn't a negotiation anymore. It was a death sentence. He ran, Marcus said. He ran, withdrew everything from his bank accounts, packed up Sarah and the kids in the middle of the night. They drove to the Canadian border and disappeared. New identities, new life, new names. Thomas's voice broke. I helped arrange it, used old contacts from my army days, got them across, got them set up. You never saw him again. Thomas shook his head. He called once, 6 months later, from a payphone. Wouldn't say where he was. Just wanted to know if Titan had found the cash. I told him no, told him I was maintaining the cabin, keeping watch. He thanked me and hung up. That was February 1977. I never heard from him again. David took over the story. My father spent the next 48 years protecting this place. Paid the property taxes every year, $27,000 total over nearly 5 decades, kept the utilities running, maintained the security systems, upgraded them as technology improved, all waiting for the day Gerald or his family would come back. But they never did, Emma whispered. No, sweetheart, Thomas said gently. They never did. And about 10 years ago, I started researching, trying to find them. I discovered that Gerald had died in 2008. Heart attack. He was living in British Columbia under the name George Walsh. He'd worked as a high school science teacher, lived quietly, never came back. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. A man who'd found a fortune, who'd spent years protecting it, who'd sacrificed everything for his family's future, and died in anonymity, never claiming what was his. What about his wife, his children? Sarah died in 2014, also in Canada. The children. Thomas pulled out more documents. They scattered. The son moved to California in the 90s, died in a motorcycle accident in 2003. The daughter Rachel stayed in Canada, married, had a daughter of her own, named her Emma. He looked at the girl on the couch. Your mother. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. Your mother died 5 years ago. Cancer. She was only 33, and Rachel raised you. She's the one who kept the family history alive. She's the one who remembered the cabin, who knew about the legacy. How did she find this place? Marcus asked. David answered. She didn't, not right away. But last year, Rachel discovered her father's journal among her mother's belongings. Gerald had left it for his children, detailed instructions, maps, the story of what happened, and the code, Emma's birthday, your mother's birthday. March 5th, 1976, Thomas said. The same day Gerald made his first major Alexandrite extraction. He said it was a sign that this fortune was meant for his granddaughter. Marcus was putting it together. Rachel came here to claim it, for Emma. She came here to give her niece a future, David said. Rachel was sick, same cancer that took her sister, stage 4. She had maybe 6 months. She wanted to make sure Emma was taken care of, that she wouldn't end up in the system, that she'd have resources to build a life. But Titan was watching, Marcus said. Thomas nodded. We didn't know Rachel was coming. She didn't contact us, didn't know we existed. She came to town asking questions, checking property records, asking about the Whitmore family, and she asked the wrong person. Who? Mary Ellen Carson, David said bitterly. She works at the county clerk's office. Her father was on Titan Resources Board back in the 70s. She still has connections. She hears the name Whitmore mentioned for the first time in 48 years. She makes a phone call. To Connor Blake? No. Thomas's expression was grim. Blake died in 2012, but his son took over his position at Titan. Same name, same methods. When word came that a Whitmore descendant was asking questions, he activated protocols his father had established decades ago. Marcus felt cold that had nothing to do with the temperature. They followed Rachel up the mountain. We tried to warn her, David said, his voice thick with regret. Left a note at her hotel, unsigned, told her to leave Montana, that it wasn't safe. But she didn't listen. She'd come too far. She brought Emma up here 3 days ago. We tracked them with our own surveillance, saw them hiking toward the cabin. And Titan's people saw them too, Marcus finished. Thomas closed his eyes. Rachel must have realized they were being followed. About 2 miles from here, she sent Emma ahead, told her to wait. Then Rachel went a different direction, led them away. She sacrificed herself, Marcus said quietly. We found her body at the bottom of Widow's Ravine. Broken neck. Could have been an accident, a fall. But there were signs of a struggle, tracks from multiple people, and Rachel's backpack was missing. They took it. Looking for the code, Marcus realized. Looking for information about how to access the vault. They didn't find it, David said. Rachel was smart. She'd memorized everything, carried nothing written. The only thing that could open that vault was Emma's birthday, and only Emma knew that. Emma had been crying silently through the entire story. Now she looked up at Marcus with red-rimmed eyes. Aunt Rachel saved me. Yes, Marcus said softly. She did. And now those bad men are coming for me. Marcus knelt in front of her. I won't let them touch you, I promise. Thomas stood again, pulling out more documents. This isn't just about Emma's inheritance. It's bigger than that. For 48 years, I've been documenting everything Titan Resources has done. Every bribed official, every covered-up death, every environmental disaster they've hidden, every illegal land seizure. He spread the papers across the desk. Police reports, medical examiner reports, financial records, photographs. 3 people died in accidents after refusing to sell land to Titan. 5 more disappeared. 2 mining operations had accidental collapses that killed 17 workers. All of it covered up, all of it buried. Why didn't you go to the authorities? Marcus asked. Who? Thomas's laugh was bitter. Titan has connections everywhere. Local police, state politicians, federal judges. They've been operating in Montana for 60 years. They own this place in every way that matters. David pulled out a laptop. But times have changed. The internet exists. Investigative journalism, social media, things that didn't exist in the 70s. If we can get this evidence to the right people, get it online, get it public, Titan loses their power. You need a journalist, Marcus said. I know someone, David replied. Vera Delgado, Pulitzer Prize winner. She's made a career exposing corporate corruption. If we can get her everything, the evidence, Emma's testimony, access to the vault, she'll publish it. And once it's public, Titan can't silence us. They can't make us disappear. Marcus looked at Emma. Are you willing to tell your story? To talk about what happened? Emma nodded, her small chin set with determination that reminded Marcus of Sarah, of the way his wife had faced her cancer with courage that humbled him. Okay, Marcus said. He turned to Thomas and David. How do we do this? Thomas pulled out a satellite phone. We call Vera. Get her here as soon as the storm clears. She needs to see the vault. Document everything. Interview Emma. We give her the whole story. And then? Marcus asked. Then we go public, all at once, press release, online publication, national news. Before Titan can react, before they can file injunctions or threaten lawsuits, the truth is out. Emma is identified as the rightful heir. The vault is documented. Titan's crimes are exposed. They'll come after us, Marcus said. Before the story breaks, they're probably already on their way. David checked his watch. The storm's supposed to clear by dawn. If Titan's people are smart, they're staging at the base of the mountain right now, waiting for first light. Then we have maybe 12 hours, Marcus said. His old training was kicking in. Tactics, strategy, defense. How many of them? Based on what we saw following Rachel, David's face was grim. At least 4, maybe more. Armed, experienced. And how many of us? Thomas looked old and tired. I've got cancer, son. Pancreatic. 4 months, maybe 6. I'm not much use in a fight. I can shoot, David said, but I'm not trained. I fix computers for a living. Marcus assessed the situation. 4 armed mercenaries, maybe more. Against himself, 12 years removed from his military training, a computer tech, a dying old man, and an 8-year-old girl. In a cabin surrounded by 3 feet of snow with limited exits and no backup. The odds were terrible, but Marcus had faced terrible odds before, had pulled people off mountains when everyone said they couldn't be saved, had kept his wife comfortable and loved through 2 years of aggressive cancer when the doctors said she'd be gone in 6 months. He knew how to fight when the fight seemed impossible. We need to fortify this place, Marcus said. Board the windows, create choke points, weapons. What do we have? David disappeared into a back room, returned with a hunting rifle and a shotgun. My dad's, plus whatever you're carrying. Marcus had his knife and a small .38 revolver he kept for emergencies. Not much against trained professionals, but better than nothing. Emma, Marcus said, I need you to go back down to the vault. There's food down there, right? Water? Thomas nodded. Emergency supplies, enough for weeks. Good. Emma, when I tell you, you go down there. Lock the door from inside if you can. Stay hidden. No matter what you hear up here, you stay hidden. Understand? Emma's eyes were wide with fear. What about you? I'll come get you when it's safe. I promise. Thomas placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. There's another way out. From the vault. An escape tunnel. Gerald and I built it in case of cave-in or discovery. It leads to a ravine about half a mile south. There's emergency supplies there. A vehicle. Marcus felt a spark of hope. Can Emma get through it alone? She's small. She could, but it's dark, narrow. She'd be terrified. Better terrified than dead, Marcus said harshly. Then, softer. Emma, if something happens, if the bad men get past us, you go through that tunnel. You run. You find help. Can you do that? Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. I don't want you to die. Marcus pulled her into a hug. I don't plan to, but if I do, you need to survive. You need to tell this story. You need to claim what's yours and make sure your Grandpa Gerald's sacrifice meant something, okay? Okay, Emma whispered. The next hours passed in tense preparation. Marcus and David moved furniture, barricaded windows, created firing positions. Thomas showed Marcus the tunnel exit on a map, explained how to activate the security cameras, how to shut down the vault remotely if needed. Emma sat on the couch, wrapped in blankets, watching the adults prepare for violence. She looked so small, so vulnerable. Around midnight, the storm began to ease. The wind died down. The snow fell in gentle flakes instead of horizontal sheets. Visibility improved from 20 feet to 50, then 100. Marcus stood at the window, scanning the tree line. They'll come at first light. Use the dawn to cover their approach. We should call Vera now, David said. Get her moving. Thomas picked up the satellite phone, dialed. It rang once, twice. Then a woman's voice answered. This is Vera Delgado. Vera, it's David Brennan. I have a story for you. The biggest story of your career. But you need to get to Montana. Now. There was a pause. What kind of story? Corporate corruption, murder, a 50-year conspiracy, and a vault containing $310 million in gemstones, plus a little girl who's the rightful heir to all of it. Another pause, longer. This better not be bullshit, David. It's not. But the people who've been covering this up for 5 decades are about to attack the location where the evidence is. If you want this story, you need to get here before everyone's dead. Send me coordinates. I'll charter a helicopter. Be there by dawn. David sent the information, hung up, looked at Marcus. She's coming. Good. Marcus checked his revolver, made sure it was loaded. Because so are they. As if in response, a sound cut through the quiet night. Distant at first, then growing louder. The mechanical whine of engines. Multiple engines, snowmobiles. Marcus killed the lights in the cabin, moved to the window, strained his eyes against the darkness and falling snow. He saw them. 4 headlights, maybe 5, coming up the mountain road, moving fast despite the conditions. "They're here," Marcus said quietly. David chambered around in his rifle. Thomas moved Emma toward the vault door. "Go," Marcus told the girl. "Now, down to the vault. Hide in the tunnel entrance. If we don't come for you by sunrise, you run. You get out of here. Find help." Emma nodded, her face pale but determined. She hugged Marcus one more time, then Thomas, then David. "Thank you for protecting me." Then she disappeared down the stairs. The steel door closed behind her with a solid thunk. Marcus, David, and Thomas positioned themselves at windows and doorways, weapons ready, hearts pounding. The snowmobile engines grew louder, closer, then they shut off. Silence fell over the mountain, heavy and waiting. "Here we go," Marcus whispered. A voice called out from the darkness, amplified by a megaphone. "This is Connor Blake with Titan Resources Security. We know you have the girl. Send her out and nobody gets hurt. You have 5 minutes to comply." Marcus's blood ran cold. Connor Blake, the same name as the man who'd terrorized Gerald Whitmore in the 70s, the son carrying on his father's legacy of violence. "Don't answer," Marcus whispered to David. "Let them wait. Let them wonder." The 5 minutes stretched out like hours. Marcus watched the tree line, saw shadows moving, at least 6 men, maybe more, spreading out, surrounding the cabin. These weren't amateurs. These were professionals, trained, armed, dangerous. The megaphone crackled again. "Your 5 minutes are up. Last chance. Send out the girl or we come in." Marcus made his decision. He moved to the door, cracked it open just enough for his voice to carry. "The girl's not here," he called out. "She's somewhere safe, somewhere you'll never find her. And every second you waste trying to get to her is another second that evidence of your crimes gets distributed to journalists around the world." Silence. Then, "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who's seen what your company does. Someone who's documented it all. You come through that door, you're not just fighting us. You're fighting the truth, and the truth is already on its way out." Another pause. Then Blake's voice, without the megaphone, closer. "You think you're protecting her? You're signing her death warrant. Titan Resources has been doing this for 60 years. We don't lose. We don't give up. We'll find her. We'll find the vault, and everyone who got in our way will disappear, just like the Whitmores." "The Whitmores didn't disappear," Marcus called back. "They escaped, they survived, and their granddaughter is about to inherit everything you've been trying to steal." He could hear Blake's anger in his next words. "Bring them in. All of them. Alive if possible. Dead if necessary." The shooting started 30 seconds later. The first shot shattered the window above Marcus's head, sending glass cascading like frozen rain. He dropped flat, rolled behind the heavy oak table David had positioned as cover. More shots followed, rapid, controlled, professional. They weren't shooting to kill yet. They were probing, testing the defenses, seeing where the return fire would come from. Marcus didn't give them the satisfaction. He stayed low, controlled his breathing, let them waste ammunition on empty windows. David was positioned in the back bedroom, rifle aimed through a narrow gap in the boarded window. Thomas was in the kitchen, shotgun resting on the counter, pointed at the back door. The old man's hands shook, but his eyes were steady. The shooting stopped. Silence rushed back in, broken only by the soft whisper of falling snow. Marcus risked a glance through a crack in the boards, saw shadows moving through the trees. They were spreading out, trying to flank. Classic assault pattern. One team would provide covering fire, while another breached the door. He'd seen this before, in Afghanistan, in Syria during his contractor days before he'd met Sarah and chosen a quieter life. He knew how it worked, knew how it ended, unless he changed the script. "David," Marcus called quietly, "when they breach, they'll come through the front door hard. Flashbang probably. Don't look at it. Cover your ears. Shoot at the doorway, not at targets. Make them second-guess every step. Copy. David's voice came back, surprisingly steady. Thomas said nothing, but Marcus heard him pump the shotgun. The old man knew what was coming. The megaphone crackled again. Final warning, send out the girl or we're coming in. Marcus didn't answer. Let them wonder. Let them worry. What Blake didn't know was that Emma was already gone, deep in the vault, probably crawling into the escape tunnel right now if she'd listened to instructions. Every second Marcus bought her was another few yards of distance between her and danger. He heard them coming, boots crunching in snow, low voices coordinating. Professional, disciplined, but human. And humans made mistakes when they thought they had the advantage. The front door exploded inward, not breached, blown off its hinges with a shaped charge. The concussion shook the cabin. Smoke and snow swirled in the opening. No flashbang. They were confident, arrogant. Marcus waited 1 heartbeat, 2, saw the first shadow move through the doorway. He fired 3 shots, controlled, aimed at center mass. The shadow dropped with a scream. The others scattered, pulling back. 1 down, Marcus called out. 5 to go, maybe 6. I've been keeping count, Blake. How many of your people are you willing to lose for this? The response was a hail of gunfire that tore through the wooden walls like they were paper. Marcus pressed himself flat behind the oak table. It was solid wood, 3 inches thick. Rounds thunked into it but didn't penetrate. David returned fire from the bedroom. 2 shots. Marcus heard a yelp of pain. Clipped 1, David called. Good shooting. The gunfire stopped again. Marcus heard angry voices outside. Someone was arguing. Someone else was calling for a medic. Blake's voice, closer now. You just killed a man. Self-defense, Marcus called back. You broke into my shelter, threatened a child, opened fire first. Every court in America will call that justified. There's no court coming, friend. No police, no rescue. Just you, an old man, and a computer nerd against professionals who do this for a living. Then why are you still outside? Marcus taunted. Why haven't you rushed us? Maybe because you've lost 2 men already and you're starting to wonder if this is worth it. Silence. Marcus had hit a nerve. I've got 20,000 in cash in my pocket, Blake called out. 20,000 says you walk away right now. Leave the girl. Leave the old men. Walk down this mountain and forget you were ever here. Marcus laughed, actually laughed. You really think I can be bought? Everyone can be bought. It's just a matter of price. My price is your company burning to the ground. My price is justice for every person Titan Resources has destroyed. My price is watching you in handcuffs. Marcus paused. How's that sound? The answer was another barrage of gunfire, but this time it was different. This time they were shooting from multiple positions. Coordinated fire, keeping heads down while someone moved. Marcus caught a glimpse of shadow at the shattered window, threw himself sideways as a man came through, submachine gun raised. Marcus's revolver barked twice. The man stumbled, fell back through the window. 3 down, Marcus called. How many more, Blake? How many more mothers are going to get a flag because you wanted gemstones? David fired from the bedroom. Thomas's shotgun boomed from the kitchen. Someone outside screamed. The cabin was filling with gun smoke and the copper smell of blood. Marcus's ears rang from the confined space gunfire. His hands were steady, but his heart was hammering. This wasn't sustainable. They had limited ammunition, limited time. Eventually Blake would overwhelm them through sheer persistence. But every minute was another minute for Emma to escape. Another minute for Vera to get closer. Marcus checked his revolver. 3 rounds left. He had a speed loader in his pocket. 6 more rounds. 9 total. David had maybe 10 rounds for the rifle. Thomas had 4 shells in the shotgun. Against at least 3 armed professionals, probably more. The math was bad. Thomas, Marcus called. How long until sunrise? The old man checked his watch. 20 minutes, maybe 30. 20 minutes until Vera's helicopter could land. 20 minutes until help arrived. Might as well be 20 hours. Blake's voice again. You're out of time, out of ammunition, out of options. Last chance. Send out the girl and live, or die protecting someone else's fortune. Marcus said nothing. Let the silence stretch. Let Blake wonder if he was considering it. Then he heard it. Faint at first, then growing louder. The distinctive whop-whop-whop of helicopter rotors. Blake heard it too. What the hell? The helicopter came in fast and low, spotlight blazing, illuminating the entire clearing in harsh white light. Marcus saw them clearly now. 4 men in tactical gear, weapons raised, caught in the open. A loudspeaker from the helicopter. "This is the FBI. Drop your weapons. You are surrounded. Drop your weapons now." Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Somehow, impossibly, they'd made it. But how? Vera couldn't have gotten here this fast. It had been less than an hour since the call, unless someone else had been watching. Someone else had been waiting. Blake's men were scrambling, trying to reach cover. The helicopter spotlight tracked them. More vehicles were coming up the road now. Real ones. Police cruisers, federal SUVs, lights flashing red and blue through the snow. Blake himself was visible now in the spotlight. A man in his 50s, grey hair, expensive tactical gear. His face was twisted with rage and disbelief. "Weapons down," the FBI voice commanded. "Now!" One of Blake's men made the mistake of raising his gun toward the helicopter. 3 shots cracked out from the trees. The man dropped. FBI snipers. They'd been in position, waiting. The remaining men dropped their weapons, raised their hands. Blake stood rigid for a moment, then slowly, deliberately placed his gun in the snow. The helicopter landed in the clearing. Federal agents poured out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. More agents came from the tree line. They'd been there all along, watching, waiting for Blake to incriminate himself completely. Marcus stood slowly, hands visible, revolver pointed at the floor. A female agent in an FBI windbreaker entered through the blown-out doorway, weapon trained on him. "Marcus Kane?" she asked. "That's me. I'm Special Agent Sarah Mendoza. Lower your weapon, please." Marcus did. Carefully, placed it on the table. "Where's the child, Emma Whitmore?" "Safe, underground. There's a vault beneath this cabin. She's in there." Mendoza spoke into her radio. "Target secure. Child located. Send medical." She looked at Marcus with something like respect. "You did good. Kept her alive. Kept yourself alive. That's not easy against Blake's crew." "How did you know to come?" Marcus asked. "We only called the journalist an hour ago." Mendoza smiled slightly. "We've been investigating Titan Resources for 3 years. Wire fraud, racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder. When Connor Blake activated his security team and moved them to Montana, we knew something big was happening. We've had surveillance on this cabin for 2 days. You knew Emma was coming. We knew someone was asking questions about the Whitmore property. We knew Blake knew. We let it play out because we needed him to act. Needed him to incriminate himself and his company beyond any legal doubt." She paused. "We didn't expect him to move this fast. Didn't expect armed assault. You stopping them gave us grounds to move in." David emerged from the bedroom, hands up. Thomas from the kitchen. "Thomas Brennan?" Mendoza asked. Thomas nodded. "You've been maintaining this property for 48 years?" "Yes." "And you have documentation? Evidence of Titan's crimes?" "Everything. 48 years of it." Mendoza's smile widened. "Then Merry Christmas, Mr. Brennan. You just gave us enough evidence to dismantle one of the most corrupt corporations in America." More agents were flooding in now. Crime scene techs, medics. Someone was treating the wounded attacker Marcus had shot. Others were securing Blake and his men in flex cuffs. Marcus walked to the steel door. "I need to get Emma. She's terrified down there." Mendoza nodded. "Go. But I'm coming with you. Need to see this vault anyway." Marcus descended the stone steps with Mendoza behind him. The cavern lights were still on. He could see Emma's small form huddled at the entrance to the escape tunnel, exactly where he'd told her to wait. "Emma," Marcus called softly. "It's okay. You're safe now. The bad men are gone." Emma looked up, her face streaked with tears. Then she saw him and ran, threw herself into his arms with such force she almost knocked him over. "You came back," she sobbed into his chest. "You came back." "I promised," Marcus said, his own voice thick. "I always keep my promises." Mendoza stood at the bottom of the stairs, staring at the cavern full of alexandrite with her mouth open. "Holy Mother of God," she whispered. "It's real. It's all real." Emma pulled back from Marcus, wiped her eyes. "Is it over? Are the bad people gone?" "They're gone," Marcus assured her. "The FBI is here. You're safe. Your grandfather's legacy is safe. Everything he fought for, everything your Aunt Rachel died for, it's finally safe." Emma looked around at the glittering cases. "What happens now?" "Now," Marcus smiled. "Now you inherit the most valuable private gemstone collection in North America. Now you become very, very wealthy. And now you get to decide how to use that wealth, just like your grandfather wanted." By the time they emerged from the vault, dawn had broken. The storm had passed completely, leaving the world clean and white and impossibly bright. The clearing around the cabin was full of vehicles and personnel. Blake and his men were being loaded into transport vehicles. Crime scene investigators were photographing everything. Vera Delgado had arrived. She was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a digital recorder in her hand. She approached Marcus and Emma carefully. "Emma Whitmore?" she asked gently. Emma nodded. "I'm Vera Delgado. I'm a journalist. Would you be willing to tell me your story about your grandfather, about your Aunt Rachel, about what happened here?" Emma looked at Marcus. He nodded encouragement. "Okay," Emma said quietly. "I'll tell you everything." They sat on the porch of the cabin, Marcus, Emma, Thomas, David, and Vera. The recorder captured every word. Emma talked about Aunt Rachel, about the hike up the mountain, about waiting in the cold, about Marcus finding her, about learning the truth of her family's legacy. Thomas filled in the historical details. The discovery, the threats, Gerald's disappearance, 48 years of silent guardianship. David provided the technical documentation, the evidence of Titan's crimes, the financial records, the proof. Vera's eyes grew wider with each revelation. "This is incredible," she said. "This is Pulitzer-level incredible. Corporate corruption spanning 5 decades, murder, conspiracy, illegal mining operations, environmental disasters. And at the center of it all, a family trying to protect something beautiful from people who only saw profit." "When can you publish?" Thomas asked. 24 hours, maybe less. I need to verify everything, get statements from the FBI, but this is going out. The whole world is going to know what Titan Resources did, what they tried to do." Marcus looked at Emma. The girl was exhausted, traumatized, but there was something else in her expression. Strength, resilience, the same qualities her grandfather must have had. "What about Emma?" Marcus asked. "She needs protection. Titan still has resources, still has people." Mendoza, who'd been listening nearby, spoke up. "She'll be placed in protective custody until the trial. After that, with Titan's leadership in prison and the company bankrupt from legal fees and settlements, she'll be safe." "And her inheritance?" "There'll be legal proceedings. Could take a year or more. But the vault and its contents are clearly the property of the Whitmore estate. Emma is the sole surviving heir. It's hers." Mendoza paused. "She's going to need a guardian. Someone to manage the estate until she's 18, someone trustworthy." Everyone looked at Marcus. He shook his head. "I'm not qualified. I live alone in the mountains. I fix engines and set traps. I'm not—" "You saved my life," Emma said quietly. "You protected me. You kept your promise." She looked up at him with those serious brown eyes. "I trust you." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been sealed shut for 6 years. Since Sarah died, since he'd walked away from helping people because he couldn't bear losing anyone else. But here was this child, this brave, broken, resilient child who needed someone, who was asking him to be that someone. "I don't know the first thing about raising a kid," Marcus said. "Neither did I," Thomas said with a slight smile. "But you figure it out, and you don't do it alone. You build a family. Blood or chosen doesn't matter." David nodded. "We'll help. All of us. She needs someone strong, someone who won't be intimidated, someone who keeps promises." He looked at Marcus meaningfully. "That's you." Marcus looked at Emma. Really looked at her. saw not just a scared 8-year-old, but someone brave enough to crawl through a mountain tunnel to escape danger. Someone strong enough to tell her story to strangers. Someone who'd lost everything but refused to be broken. She reminded him of Sarah. "Okay," Marcus said, his voice rough. "Okay, if the court allows it, if Emma wants it, I'll do it." Emma smiled. Actually smiled. The first real smile Marcus had seen on her face. She reached out and took his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. The next weeks blurred together in a chaos of legal proceedings, media interviews, and FBI debriefings. Vera's story broke worldwide. The $300 million secret, how one corporation terrorized a family for 5 decades, ran in every major publication. Cable news couldn't get enough of it. The footage of Blake's arrest, the photographs of the Alexandrite vault, the interview with Emma, brave and articulate beyond her years. Titan Resources stock collapsed. The board of directors resigned. Criminal charges were filed against 17 executives and employees. The company filed for bankruptcy within 2 weeks. Blake himself was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and a dozen other counts. Bail was denied. He'd spend the rest of his life in prison. The vault was catalogued by the Smithsonian's Mineralogy Department. The collection was confirmed as authentic and valued at $327 million, even more than Gerald's estimates. It was the largest private Alexandrite collection ever discovered. Emma was placed in temporary foster care while the legal proceedings worked through the system. But she spoke to Marcus every day. Video calls where she told him about school, about therapy, about the overwhelming strangeness of suddenly being wealthy beyond imagination. Marcus talked to lawyers, went through background checks, attended parenting classes that made him feel completely out of his depth. But he kept showing up, kept pushing forward, because he'd made a promise. 3 months after that night in the cabin, Marcus stood in a courtroom in Missoula. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s who'd seen too many children fall through the cracks of the system. "Mr. Kane," she said, "you're asking this court to grant you emergency guardianship of Emma Whitmore, with the intention of adopting her once the estate is settled. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "You're 38 years old, unmarried, you live alone in the wilderness. You have no experience raising children. Why should I believe you're the right person to care for this child?" Marcus thought about his answer carefully. "I'm not the right person," he said honestly. "I'm probably the wrong person. I don't know how to braid hair or help with homework or any of the normal parent things, but I know how to protect people. I know how to keep promises. And I know what it's like to lose everything and have to rebuild from nothing." He looked at Emma, sitting in the front row between Thomas and David. That little girl has been through hell. She's lost her mother, her aunt, her entire family. She's inherited a fortune that people have killed for. She needs someone who won't be intimidated by that. Someone who'll put her safety and well-being above everything else. Someone stubborn enough to fight the whole world, if that's what it takes to keep her safe. He turned back to the judge. "That's me, Your Honor. I'm stubborn, I'm protective, and I love that kid like she was my own. Maybe I can't be a perfect parent, but I can be present. I can be loyal. I can be the person she needs right now." The courtroom was silent. The judge studied Marcus for a long moment. Then she looked at Emma. "Emma, would you approach the bench, please?" Emma walked forward, small and serious in her new dress. "Emma," the judge said gently, "this is your decision as much as anyone's. Do you want Mr. Kane to be your guardian?" Emma nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "Why?" Emma's voice was clear and strong. "Because he stopped when everyone else drove past. Because he broke into a scary cabin to save me. Because he fought bad people to protect me. Because he kept every promise he made." She paused. "And because when I'm with him, I feel safe." The judge's stern expression softened slightly. She looked at Marcus. "Mr. Kane, I'm granting you temporary emergency guardianship for 6 months. During that time, you'll be monitored by social services. You'll attend all required meetings and sessions. You'll provide a safe, stable home environment. At the end of 6 months, we'll reconvene and discuss permanent adoption. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Then this court grants temporary guardianship. Next case. Emma ran to Marcus. He caught her, lifted her up, and for the first time since Sarah died, Marcus felt something like home. They moved into a real house. Not Marcus's isolated cabin, but a place just outside Missoula, close enough to schools and hospitals and normal life. Far enough from the city to still feel like Montana. 3 bedrooms, a garage where Marcus could work, a yard where Emma could play. Thomas and David helped them move in, brought furniture and groceries and endless advice Marcus pretended to ignore but secretly appreciated. The first night in the new house, Emma couldn't sleep. Marcus found her sitting on her bed at 2 in the morning, staring out the window. "What's wrong?" he asked. "I keep thinking they're coming," Emma said quietly. "The bad men. I keep thinking I'll hear snowmobiles." Marcus sat beside her. "They're in prison. They can't hurt you." "I know, but I still hear them, in my dreams." Marcus understood. He'd had his own nightmares after Sarah died, still did sometimes. "Want to know a secret?" he asked. Emma nodded. "I'm scared too. Scared I'll mess this up. Scared I'm not good enough to take care of you. Scared I'll let you down." Emma looked at him with surprise. "You're scared?" "Terrified. But being scared doesn't mean we stop. It just means we're brave. Because being brave isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway." Emma thought about that. Aunt Rachel was brave. Yes, she was. She died protecting me. She did. "I want to make her proud," Emma whispered. Marcus pulled her close. "You already have. You survived. You told the truth. You helped stop bad people from hurting anyone else. Rachel would be so proud of you." They sat together in the quiet house, neither of them quite fitting yet into this new life they were building, but they were trying, and maybe that was enough. The months passed. Spring came to Montana with muddy roads and budding trees. Emma started school, made friends slowly, saw a therapist twice a week who helped her process trauma Marcus couldn't fully understand, but did his best to support. Marcus learned to cook more than just campfire meals, learned to pack lunches and check homework and navigate parent-teacher conferences. It was harder than any mountain climb, more terrifying than any rescue operation, but also more rewarding than anything he'd done since Sarah. The estate was finally settled in August. After legal fees and taxes and various expenses, Emma inherited $290 million. The collection itself would be displayed at the Smithsonian, with Emma retaining ownership. The annual display fees alone would generate enough income to live comfortably forever. But Emma surprised everyone. At just 8 years old, she announced what she wanted to do with her inheritance. "I want to start a foundation," she told Marcus, "for kids who lose their families, kids in foster care, kids like me. I want to help them." They established the Rachel Whitmore Foundation for Children. It provided scholarships, support services, legal aid, and emergency assistance to orphaned and fostered children across Montana. Emma insisted on being involved in every decision, learning how to use her wealth to help others. Gerald Whitmore would have been proud. A year after that night in the cabin, Marcus and Emma hiked back up the mountain. Thomas and David came with them. They stood outside the cabin, now secured as a historical landmark, and planted a memorial tree. The plaque read, "In memory of Gerald and Sarah Whitmore and Rachel Whitmore. They protected something beautiful from those who saw only profit. They sacrificed everything so that future generations could benefit. May we honor their courage and their wisdom." Emma placed flowers at the base of the tree. Thomas said a few words. David read from Gerald's journal. Marcus just stood there, his hand on Emma's shoulder, and felt grateful. Grateful that the storm had forced him into a cursed cabin. Grateful that he'd been stubborn enough to fight when fighting seemed pointless. Grateful that life had given him a second chance at family. Emma looked up at him. "Do you think they're proud, Grandpa Gerald and Aunt Rachel?" Marcus thought about 2 people he'd never met, about a man who'd spent his life protecting something precious. About a woman who'd sacrificed herself to save a child. About the courage it took to stand against overwhelming power and say no. "I think they're very proud," Marcus said, "of you, of what you're doing with their legacy, of the person you're becoming." Emma smiled, then said something that made Marcus's chest tight. "I think Mom would be proud of you too, for taking care of me, for being my dad." Dad. She'd never called him that before, had carefully avoided it, even as they'd grown closer, as if saying it out loud would make it too real, too permanent, too much like the family she'd lost. But now she'd said it, and Marcus realized he'd been waiting to hear it for months. "I'm proud of you too," Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion, "every single day." They stood together on the mountain where their lives had intersected, where fortune and tragedy had collided, where a man running from grief had found purpose, where a child fleeing death had found family. The cabin behind them no longer felt cursed, it felt sacred, a monument to courage, to sacrifice, to the truth that some things are worth protecting, even when protection seems impossible. As they hiked back down the mountain, Emma chattering about school and friends and plans for the foundation, Marcus realized something profound. For 6 years, he'd thought his purpose died with Sarah. He'd retreated to the mountains to wait out his remaining years in isolation. But life had other plans. Life had sent a storm, and a child, and a choice. Sometimes the most forbidden doors are the ones we most need to open. Sometimes running from the cold leads you to exactly where you need to be, and sometimes protecting someone else's legacy helps you reclaim your own. Marcus Kane had stopped on a mountain road when everyone else drove past. He'd broken into a cursed cabin. He'd fought impossible odds. He'd kept promises when breaking them would have been easier, and in doing so, he'd saved more than a child's life. He'd saved his own. Anyone can choose courage when the path ahead looks dark and the odds seem impossible. Sometimes the most valuable treasures aren't the ones hidden in vaults, but the connections we forge and the promises we keep. Sometimes protecting one small life is worth more than all the wealth in the world. And sometimes the father you never planned to be becomes the greatest legacy you'll ever leave. As the Montana sun set over the mountains, painting the snow-capped peaks in shades of gold and amber, Marcus Kane walked hand in hand with his daughter toward home. The man who'd once lived for solitude had found something better. The girl who'd lost everything had gained something precious. Together they'd turned tragedy into triumph, turned a forbidden cabin into a symbol of hope, turned $310 million into a force for good. Because in the end, the greatest fortune isn't measured in gemstones or money. It's measured in courage, in sacrifice, in love that refuses to give up, even when giving up seems like the only option. It's measured in small hands held tight, in promises kept, in legacies honored, in the simple, profound act of showing up when others turn away. The cabin on the mountain still stands, preserved as a testament to the Whitmore family's courage and to the man who finally brought their story into the light. Visitors come from around the world to see where one of history's greatest gemstone discoveries was hidden for nearly 50 years, where corporate greed was finally defeated, where justice prevailed. But for Marcus and Emma, it's something more personal. It's the place where their family began, where a grieving man and a frightened child found each other in the darkness and decided to hold on, where the world's coldest storm led to the warmest homecoming. And on quiet nights, when Emma has nightmares about snowmobiles and bad men, Marcus holds her close and reminds her of something true, something important, something worth remembering. "You're safe," he tells her. "You're loved, and you're never, ever alone. That's a promise, and I always keep my promises." Some doors are meant to be opened, even when everyone says they're forbidden. Some secrets are meant to be protected, even when the cost seems too high. And some families are forged not by blood, but by fire, by storms, by shared courage in the face of impossible odds. This is the story of Marcus Kane and Emma Whitmore, of Thomas Brennan and David Brennan, of Gerald and Rachel and Sarah Whitmore, of ordinary people who did extraordinary things, of a mountain cabin that held more than treasure, of a legacy that survived 5 decades of greed and violence, of the truth that no amount of money or power can defeat one simple thing: the courage to do what's right, even when the world says to walk away. The end. Up next, 2 more incredible true stories that will move you and inspire you. Click to continue this journey with us. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you believe some promises are worth keeping. Some battles are worth fighting, and some families are worth everything.